What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So today I want to do a first impressions three-parter for you all. There's been a lot of stuff coming out, and unfortunately I haven't been able to keep up with it the way that I have in the past. I've been getting busier and busier with work and whatnot, so my free time has been dwindling more and more. I initially wanted to do a first impressions five-parter. I was going to do two of them. I was going to do two with five series each and to cover like 10 new series that have come out, but unfortunately that kind of went out the window because my time is so short. However, what I will be doing today is I'm going to do a three-parter. I'm going to talk about three series that I've read that I've really enjoyed that I think are worth checking out if you haven't read any of them yet. One of them is pretty popular, so I'm sure a lot of you probably already consumed it or reading it as it comes out, and then the other two, I don't know if too many people are reading those, so I do want to talk about all three of these. And yeah, hopefully if you haven't read any of these, maybe it'll be something that you might want to check out. So let's kick this thing off. We're gonna start this video off with the first series. Alright, so right off the bat, we're going to talk about NightLight Hounds. Pretty much, NightLight Hounds is written by Haruhisa Nakata, and I've actually really enjoyed the series so far. This is the same creator who did Levius, and that series has an anime, I think, that was on Netflix. I don't know if it was like 2 seasons that it ran for or 1 season, but I do remember seeing it on Netflix. I haven't seen it, also haven't read the manga for Levius, but I know it's like a sort of boxing manga, and this is not a boxing manga. NightLight Hounds is essentially a story about like vampires and whatnot. There is this city in which vampires kind of run things, and vampires essentially run the mob, but there is like more nuance to it than it's just vampires. It's kind of like a coalition of like mixed, yeah, I guess why not, like it's kind of like a coalition of like humans and vampires that essentially run the mob in tandem. And pretty much our way into this story is this kid named Jimmy, whose parents are dead. His little brother's dead as well. He couldn't protect his little brother. His parents died. I forgot how his parents died, but his brother died, unfortunately, as well. And he's got pretty much nothing to live for. So he's going to pull the plug, I guess, if you will, and ends up meeting this little girl atop a roof. And there's something special about this little girl, and as the story kind of goes on, within like the first chapter, you kind of learn that she isn't exactly human and is instead something that was bred in like a tube, if I'm not mistaken. So like there's a lot going on with her, and I don't want to get into every little specific detail about, you know, how she kind of comes to be, but she has like a set lifespan, and her existence is to hunt vampires. She is like part werewolf or something. She's like a little girl, but then she also can turn into a werewolf, and she hunts vampires for this organization that, you know, pretty much the Night Hounds, I think is what they're called. They go around and essentially, you know, take on the vampire threat that has taken over this sort of group, I guess, if you will, like this mob. And it works exactly like, you know, like a mob would work, you know, where there's like a hierarchy, and then there's like different, you know, capo, whatever, you know, down the line from the top, you know, like subsections or whatever of the different bosses and then under bosses and whatnot that would exist within a mob. All that kind of exists, you know, within this story. And the kid Jimmy, who is a part of this sort of a mob entity, is at the very bottom of it. He's like a cadet, I think is what they're called. I'm not really 100%, or a soldier, a foot soldier. I forgot what the actual term is, but he's essentially like, you know, bottom rung of this totem pole. And he ends up being sucked into this world because he has like nobody. He's by himself, you know, his family's all gone, and he kind of doesn't really care what happens to him. And he, at one point in time, he's like, it kind of seems like I said before, like, you know, he's gonna pull the plug, but he ends up, you know, meeting this little girl, and she, I think throws a baseball at him or something as like he's standing on the edge of this roof. She throws a baseball at him, and then he starts to kind of have a conversation with her, and kind of comes to find out that she has like no name, and he gives her a name, which is like Lily. And from there on, he gets pulled into this really wild sort of world. There is this shed where this dude's boss goes on certain days or whatever. Like, he goes to this shed because there's something in this shed, and we don't really know, what's going on, because it doesn't really say too much about what the story is until you kind of get to the shed and you learn, that there are vampires within this city. It kind of reminds me of like Vampires, the movie Vampires, kind of reminds me of of Lost Boys. And the reason that it reminds me of Lost Boys is there's this character named like Dorothea or something. Dorothea, I think her name is, and she gives our lead Jimmy blood at one point in time, blood mixed with wine, and I kind of thought that he was gonna turn into a vampire, but he doesn't turn into a vampire. It's a fun story, it's really well drawn. This is a veteran creator. He already did Levius, so now this is his follow-up series to Levius. As I'd said before, I haven't read Levius. I'm kind of considering checking it out now because I really like the artwork for NightLight Hounds. I think it's really solid. I like Jimmy as a lead. He's kind of an idiot, he's like a total goofball of a character, but he's a lot of fun. He's like, his heart's in the right place. Kind of reminds me a little bit of like Boardwalk Empire, which is set in like the 20s and whatnot during the Prohibition era. That's what this series feels like. It's kind of like that 20s aesthetic. I talked about a series that was similar to this as well at one point on the channel called Drunk Bullet, but this is a little more serious than Drunk Bullet. Drunk Bullet is pretty much just like these characters just being goofballs and drinking their way across America. They start in like Atlantic City, I think is where they start. They started like Atlantic City and then kind of work their way. They're essentially working their way to California, and they're boozing their way to California. It's really funny. Like, I really recommend that series. I talked about that in the video as well, in a 3-parter video as well. And yeah, this series is also kind of set in like a 20s-ish kind of era, and I do like the sort of Departed element to it, because Jimmy is essentially like a double agent. He works for like these night hounds or whatever, and at the same time, he's a part of this organization called the Lakeside Fellas. As a sort of runner or whatever for the Lakeside Fellas, he ends up becoming privy to a lot of like the inner workings and whatnot, because they don't know that he's a double agent. And it kind of reminds me of The Departed in that there's like a lot of double agents in The Departed. If you've ever seen that film, that's a phenomenal movie. Kind of hoping this story doesn't go the way of that, where like, yeah, I don't want to say what happens in The Departed for anybody that hasn't seen it, but if this story goes the way of The Departed, it's going to be a pretty sad ending. But that's a great story, like he joins up with the Night Hounds because he wants to help Lily out, because she only has like a set amount of time to live. She's basically bred to complete a mission, and then once the mission is over, there's really no need for her to be around anymore. So he doesn't want anything to happen to her, so he joins the Night Hounds to try to protect her and to ensure that whatever time she has left in this world, that she's able to live it to her fullest. Like the characters a lot. There's a dude named Kay, who is like Lily's handler, and he also starts to give Jimmy orders and whatnot, like for what he should do, what's expected of him. And Jimmy's kind of like I said before, he's kind of an idiot, so he kind of tries to take things into his own hands, and it doesn't really work out for the best, and I do like this series, and I hope that it lasts. It's looking so far like it has like a nice, sort of following to it. As of the making of this video, I think there are like 5 chapters so far for NightLight Hounds, but I like the setting a lot. The characters are really cool looking. I like the vampire girl. Her name is like Dorothea or something like that. She's like super no nonsense. Kind of reminds me of the one lady in Penguin. I forgot what her name is, but I'll post a picture of her over here from Penguin. I forgot what her name is, but she's a great character. I liked her a lot, and Penguin in general is just a phenomenal show. Penguin in general is just a solid show, dude. But yeah, definitely check out NightLight Hounds. I don't want to say too much about it. Like I went way overboard with my Centuria video, and I really don't want to do that with this one. I should have done that as a part of like a three-parter or something, because I talked about that series for way too long. But I feel like this is a good place to just sort of cut this one. And yeah, NightLight Hounds, really good manga, solid read, great artwork, great, sort of cityscapes within the story are so really well done. Characters are really cool looking. I like Jimmy a lot. He's like a lovable idiot sort of a character, and hopefully over time, like, he starts to grow more into his own as a person, and just, it doesn't rely too much on that he's an idiot, and that, like, he starts to actually, like, contribute a lot more. I think that'll be really cool and great character development for him. And I'd love to see more of Lily as well. And Kay is cool too. He's sort of like a mysterious figure, so it'll be cool to see more of him in the future. And hopefully, the series is able to last a while and doesn't get that fateful axe that so many series, and even great series that should have lasted a lot longer than they did, do tend to get that axe. And I'm really hoping that this one is able to be spared it. So yeah, please, if you can, check out NightLight Hounds. Alright, so next up we've got Yattara, which I personally am in love with. Yattara is probably my favorite series of these three, just because it's so irreverent. It's basically like you have like this hell spawn that is a cat, essentially. Like, he's got cat ears, and it's a really wild story. Basically, what Yattara is there's this being that is summoned by a misanthrope to kill everyone in the world or whatever. And when he is summoned, Yattara does set to kind of do that. Like, he eats the dude who summoned him. Like, he has this whole, like, sort of circle or whatever that he made, this, like, the summoning circle to summon Yattara, who's like the demon of gluttony, if I'm not mistaken. And he summons him into the world, and when he does, Yattara eats him, and then he's kind of like set on this conquest to just eat everyone and everything in the world. And right after he eats that one dude, he goes like next door to where there's like these three young children that are starving. And the thing with the three young children is that they're like foreigners to this sort of country in which they live. At first I thought it was set in Japan, but I'm thinking it's set somewhere else, because the currency of this world is something called lib. And this is a pretty xenophobic sort of nation, where like these three starving kids are like kind of seen like outsiders, and they're treated like trash. There's even this sort of like hate group that exists within this world called Native Citizen Conservation Association or something like that. And when Yattara encounters these three children, they're like near death, and he proceeds to eat the three kids, like straight up within like the first like 20 pages or something of the first chapter of the manga. Yattara is like straight up consumes these three kids, and then he spits them back out, because he has this sort of feeling that their flavor profile, when he eats these children, their flavor profile will be a lot better if they're cared for and nurtured and whatnot. So he essentially sets out to care for these kids and raise them as if they were his own, and brings them food, like steals food, brings them food and whatnot. And at one point in time, one of the kids, Nanato, I think his name is, because there's three kids. There's Satomi, who I think is the older sister. There's Nanato, who's like crippled. And then there is the littlest brother, whose name I cannot remember off the top of my head. Yuma, that's the little brother's name. The little brother's name is Yuma, and the three of them essentially live in this apartment where they're hiding out, and there's no power or anything, because they're not even supposed to be there. They're essentially hiding in that apartment. At one point in time, the bigger brother tries to escape from Yattara, and ends up trying to get out onto the patio, like railing or whatever. And as he's going to jump over, the little brother, who's like 4 years old, does kind of go over the railing. So then he tries to go over the railing to get the little brother, and then the sister, Setomi, kind of goes over the railing as well, and all three of them are falling from the railing, and Yattara like saves them, kind of like in the nick of time or whatever. But the one brother, Nanato, who was crippled, tried to send Yattara out to get them this box or whatever, a strong box that is at the top of this building in the distance or whatever. And he does get what's in the box, which is like 10 billion lib, which is this world's currency. And he just like showers money all over these children and like showers it all over the floor. And it's hilarious, dude, because they're freaking out. And the government or whatever, like the police, are kind of like going all over the city trying to find out what happened to this money. And you see on the TV, you see on this TV screen, this dude who runs this supposed charity, like he's saying that money is for charity or whatever, but it's pretty clear that he's like laundering that money, and he's saying, oh, the 10 billion lib for charity is all gone or whatever, it got stolen. And it's pretty clear that dude's not giving that money to any sort of charity. Like there's something corrupt going on with that money. Yeah, but ultimately what I do like about this series is Yatara. I think that's the strong point of the series, is that you have this being from, I guess, like hell or whatever, who is like the demon of gluttony, who is summoned to essentially be gluttonous, to consume and to consume everything and everyone. And, in doing so, he eats these children and he spits them back out. This series, as of right now, is like 4 chapters long. And throughout these 4 chapters, I think he's eaten these kids like 3 or 4 times. I think like literally like the second chapter, he eats Nanato and then spits them back out again. And so like he literally like eats them, where like he's crunching their bones, and like you see the sound effects of him like masticating on these children, and then like he spits them back out intact, and they have like a memory of having been eaten, but they don't really know for certain that they've been eaten. And Yatara like kind of seems like sort of like a chef or whatever, like let's say like you want to age meat, you want to have a cookout or whatever, or you want to like have like a fine aged steak or whatever, and you let it marinate. Like you put a bunch of stuff on it, your seasonings, whatever that you're going to use, and you let it marinate for like 2 or 3 days, or even like a week or 2 weeks or whatever. And then you cook it, and it's got like an interesting sort of a flavor profile. So he's kind of doing the same thing with these kids, or he's essentially trying to let them marinate. He's trying to grow them like you would plants or whatever, fruit, vegetables. He's trying to grow them and give them love and give them care and whatnot, so that when they're at their happiest, when they feel loved and cared for and whatnot, that's when he's gonna eat these kids. Once they feel like true adoration, he's like, yeah, I'm gonna be like a dad to these children. And then once like, once they cherish me, that's when I'm gonna eat these kids. It's such a wild manga, dude. It's hilarious, but it does remind me of like, I don't know if you've all read Parasite or not, but it reminds me like a ton of Parasite. It makes me think of like Migi and I think Ryoko is that character's name from Parasite. 2 characters that over time start to really develop sort of human, like sort of like human-esque characteristics. Like Migi being I forgot what Shinichi, I think his name is, Shinichi's right hand, and I think Migi literally means right. And then there's, I think her name is Ryoko, who has like a baby or whatever, and then she really comes to care about the baby that she has. And kind of, I'm wondering if it's going to go that way. I don't know if I mentioned Assassination Classroom yet or not, but kind of reminds me even of like Assassination Classroom a bit, given that this dude is like this really weird shape, much like the teacher in Assassination Classroom was like this sort of weird shape, and like only he was like yellow, and this dude's like black and gray or something, I think he is. But he can be kind of terrifying. Like if you see his transformation and whatnot, he looks super terrifying. But then when you just see him like in profile, he just looks so random, so unassuming, until like you see that he is this truly terrifying being that fully is intent on eating these kids at one point in time. And like I want to speculate this right here and now. If this series gets canceled, I really hope it doesn't. I hope it's able to last for a long time. But if this series gets canceled, I would not be surprised if the final chapter, if they tell the creator like, ooh, Yama, sorry, the readership for your series just isn't there, we're going to cancel. I would not be surprised, like in any way, shape, or form. I would not be surprised, dude, if that last chapter just ends with Yatara just eating the kids. Because it could, if it lasts long enough, it could end with them all just like living happily, or Yatara like goes away or whatever and leaves the kids alone, leaves them to their own devices or whatever, or goes with them to another country, where they can actually live happily. I could see that, going in that direction at some point in time. Maybe, however, if it gets canceled, I could see it, just ending with Yatara just saying, you know what, I like their flavor profile now. I'm gonna just eat these kids, and that's it, and that's gonna be, that's just gonna be how the series ends, and that's where the story of Yatara reaches its conclusion. Hopefully it doesn't end there, because that would be really disappointing. You kind of want to see something come about. You want to see a change in this character, but who knows? Like, this creator's done pretty much like straight up horror manga as far as I know. I think he's done or I don't know, they've done like 3 other series. I actually wrote down the other series, so I'm just gonna read them out loud to you. We got Iwanu ga Hana Kaidanshi and Tonde Fukuyama. So those are the other series that this creator has done. I don't know if any of them, I don't think any of them are available in English, possibly like scan sites or something. And I usually don't really go to scan sites much anymore. I used to a lot, like I used to read a lot of stuff on scan sites. I read a lot of Berserk on scan sites. I read all of Gantz on scan sites, and I've kind of tried to rectify that by buying the physicals and supporting these series. But yeah, I mean, I do want to see more of this series. I hope that it lasts for a while. I've talked about series in the past on this channel that ended up getting the axe, which is really unfortunate, because I like to talk about things that I hope other people will also check out, and maybe, in an effort to keep it alive. But I mean, the fact that, Gege, the creator of JJK, couldn't save Mama Yu, and he's a huge creator, and like even he couldn't save Mama Yu. That's definitely heartbreaking. But at least, while these series are ongoing, hopefully, I can get more people to check out more of these things. If you do read, on the Manga Plus app or the Shonen Jump app or whatever, or even if these ever get, in English release, physical release. The last one I'm going to talk about in this video, 100% without a doubt, is getting a physical. It's only a matter of when, because it's so popular, and it kind of like was created essentially to be like a flagship manga. So let's just jump right into it. Let's talk about the last series of this video. Alright, so the last one we're going to talk about today is possibly one of the bigger series to come out recently. As of the making of this video, this manga has 11 chapters out. So Ichi the Witch is something that I feel like was essentially created to be a flagship manga. Whether you agree with that or not, that's totally fine. I'm not saying that it's going to be the flagship manga. I'm saying that it was essentially created to be a flagship manga, and it seems that way anyway. So this is a series by 2 promising creators, which are Osamu Nishi and Shiro Usazaki. So I honestly don't really know anything else that Osamu Nishi has created in the past. I should have looked that up, and I was going to look it up to add it to my notes before doing this video, and I completely forgot, so I apologize for that. But I'll put any of his works, or any of the works that Osamu Nishi has done over here. I do know one other thing that Shiro Usazaki has done, and that is, unfortunately, Act Age, and I don't need to tell anybody about Act Age, I'm sure you all already know. So with Ichi the Witch, what these 2 creators have brought forth is a series that is a lot of fun. So Ichi the Witch is about this kid who lives in sort of like the woods and whatnot. He's a hunter, and he lives by a code which is like death for death, and he can feel kind of like a murderous intent off of things, and anytime he feels like a sort of murderous intent, he immediately springs into action to try to defend himself. And the way that he kind of gets pulled into this world of witches is that he takes on this sort of like a familiar, which is called like a magic. They're like kind of like Pokemon, I guess, almost, in this world, where like you can collect different magics and whatnot. And there's like well over 3,000 different classified magics that exist within this world. And part of the way that Ichi gets pulled into this world of witches is that because he has this, sort of hunter's instinct and whatnot, like he's got like the spirit of a hunter. He is a hunter. When he was like 6 years old, his mom or somebody left him in the woods and gave him a knife and a little bit of food. And essentially, he was given this knife so that when his food ran out, it wasn't, so that he could hunt and take care of himself. The knife was given to him so that he could essentially unalive himself. So he ends up running into this wolf, and he's on the verge of, just letting the wolf kill him, just accepting his fate. And something, kind of snaps within him. And instead of, giving in, doing the thing that he was expected to do, he kills the wolf that was going to kill him. And that kind of creates this whole new perspective for him, when he was like a little kid, and he ends up developing that, core principle by which he lives, which is death for death. If something has a murderous intent, approaches him with like a sort of murderous intent, he is fully prepared to kill that thing. And one day in the woods, he sees like this giant hulking creature, and at the same time, there are these witches that are hunting this giant hulking creature, which he doesn't know what it is, and we don't know what it is yet either, but the witches do know what it is, and it's apparently a magic, and it's a magic named King Uroro, and there is a witch in particular that is hunting this magic, and that is this witch named Discaris. This is a magic that witches for like over 1,000 years have been unable to tame. So there's like a lot of lore within this story, which is cool, man. Like I like stories that have a lot of lore. And at one point in time, there was like this voice or whatever from the outer world that told humanity of the magics and brought the existence of the magics into this universe and whatnot, and allowed girls, I guess if you will, to pair with magics, and each magic has like a sort of trial or whatever that you have to go through to pair with that magic. There's like an ice magic or something, or like a wind magic, I forgot what it is, that like a cold magic that you have to sleep outside for like a whole day and you can pair with it. There's another one where like you have to embrace fire and you'll be able to pair with that one. There's like a lot of different ones. There's like a water magic, like if you have to consume this whole thing of water, and the water magic will, become paired. And the one that's been for like well over 1,000 years, the one that no one has ever been able to pair, that's the one that Discaris, the Abyssal Witch, wants to pair and has tried time and again, I think, to pair him, to the point where I think they know each other, this magic and this girl know each other. And he's like, I don't know how to describe him, he's like a giant owl sort of looking thing, kind of like almost like a sphinx, like it's really pretty wild, like Sphinx from Dragon's Dogma 2, like the Sphinx from that, but this one's like more of like a man, and that one's a little more kind of weird. Yeah, overall, solid manga. She tries to pair, with King Uroro, fails miserably at it. Pretty much says to her, like, one thing you witches like failed to understand is that no woman can pair me or whatever. No woman can break, because you need to break his heart or get into his heart or whatever. He's got like a gem heart, sort of a heart, and if they crack the crystal of his heart or whatever, he will become their magic, and she's unable to do so, and he's almost, he's got her pinned and whatnot, he's going to kill her. And Ichi comes out as he's telling her, like, no woman can, pair with me or whatever. He says, I'm a man. He's like, I'm a man, I'm not a woman. And it's hilarious, dude, because it kind of reminded me of Lord of the Rings, where Eowyn says to the Witch King, I am no man. That's what it made me think of. But kind of wouldn't be surprised if that was an inspiration for it. Kind of like a gender reversal. Of that scene where she says, "I am no man," and he does end up breaking the dude's crystal or whatever that he has in his chest, and pairs with King Uroro. And this is a universe in which men do not ever pair. Like, no man ever has paired with a magic. Only women have paired with magics, and even then, they have to go to this school called Mantanel, or this place called Mantanel, I think, Mantanel Witches Association, which is in the capital of this place called Natali. And after, Ichi pairs with King Uroro, Descaris, the Abyssal Witch, tries to take him back to this place. And it's hilarious, dude, because you see Ichi kind of, become a witch. And he's got like this really wild sort of like gear on and whatnot that like kind of appears on him. And it's a cool, sort of subversion, because within this world, they're so set on, things being a certain way. Only women, can pair with magics, can collect magics, and they've created this whole sort of world within this universe around magics, like they respect the magics and they kind of consider them like, I don't know if I want to say gods, but they do kind of revere them in a sense. And there's this whole way in which they go about, trying to pair with magics and whatnot. And then you have Ichi, who is essentially like a hunter, and he has this whole completely different mindset than what they have, whereas they revere and fear these magics. He just sees them as like animals to be tamed and hunted and whatnot. He even gets like a lightning sort of a magic, which is like a fox. It's like a fox demon sort of a thing. He ends up getting that dude at one point in time as well. So he starts to kind of build his own sort of a magic collective, I guess, if you will, a collection of different magics and whatnot. I like the characters a lot in this series. Like, Descaris is a lot of fun. Ichi is a ton of fun as well. King Uroro is a lot of fun because like he's in Ichi's ear trying to like convince him to turn on Descaris, and Ichi like brandishes a knife super quick and almost beheads King Uroro because he felt his murderous intent, like emanating off of the magic. And I can see the series, being as popular as it seems like it's going to get. It's 11 chapters so far, and it's pretty much maintained a pretty steady readership, and I think it will probably continue to maintain a pretty steady readership. It's more of like a goofy sort of a story, I guess, more than anything. I don't think it's taking itself too seriously. There are moments where it does, kind of get a little more serious because it wants to essentially build up this world lore. The world building is cool. I think it's pretty well done, where the fact that there are like shops, once we get into like the capital or whatever of Natali or whatever, we start to see that there's all these different shops and they're all run by women, and all the women to some extent or another can use magic, though there are, women who don't have any sort of like magic abilities or whatever, and then the men obviously just flat out don't have any sort of magic like whatsoever. But there are levels of the magic where some women are like Descaris, where like they're super proficient and, like top class whatever magicians or top class witches or whatever. And then there's some that are like a little bit lower rung where they can kind of like move, books around, and that's like the extent of their magic abilities. And they run into this one girl at one point in time who's soaring through the air on like a bike. Kind of reminds me of like Kiki's Delivery Service almost a little bit. And she's like on this bike, and she's got like a bunch of stuff, and one of her letters or whatever falls out, and they're in the market, and Ichi sees these boots, and they're for women, because they have like magical attributes or whatever. Like they give a witch like more of a jump or something like height wise. A woman who is a witch can use them to jump higher, and he borrows those boots, puts them on, and jumps into the sky onto this girl's bike to return her letter, and like freaks her the hell out because he's the dude and whatnot. And then Descaris also joins the fray, and it's a lot of fun, dude. Like it's such an interesting series that I think will definitely have a pretty consistent readership. Do I personally think it's going to be the flagship manga? I don't personally think it's going to be the like flagship manga. I do know what I think it's going to be, but I don't want to say because I might end up offending somebody. But I feel like you might already know what I'm going to say it is. I think a lot of us also think that it's going to be that series, but I don't want to say what it is. I'm sure I feel like everybody should, for the most part, kind of make their own opinion and whatnot and not take anything that I say or anything that anybody else says, personally or to heart. Like, these are just my opinions, and I'm a person that, like, I like to consider my opinions to just be that. I don't think there's anything that I'm saying that should be taken personally or taken to heart, because I know a lot of people do enjoy manga to an extent where they may feel affronted or whatever, and I'm just here to talk about these things. You know what I mean? Like, I like to bring attention to different series, and I really liked Ichi the Witch. I like Ichi a lot. I like his whole aesthetic with him being a hunter and then kind of bringing this sort of like different way of seeing things into this world that was essentially only ever looking at things from one perspective. And it's interesting to have like a completely different perspective. Like, I'm not a person that lives in a bubble. Like, I don't like to think of myself as living in a bubble. I like to hear different sides of different arguments and whatnot, and I like to think that I don't live in an echo chamber. I definitely am not a person that only sees things one-sided, so I kind of like that this dude is going to bring more of a different perspective into this world, and Discaris even, kind of comments on the fact that this dude's going to bring a completely different perspective, to this world, and it's going to be interesting to see how him being there shakes it up, and maybe even in the future there may be other men who also become witches, or maybe there are other men who are witches, they're just like kind of lying hidden away, and now that Ichi's might become more of a prominent figure that ends up stepping out into the spotlight, you might see more of these men who are also witches, kind of come out as well. So I don't know, I guess we'll see. That's all I got for you. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it got kind of long. I'm kind of like falling behind on everything. I was going to try to get out like a lot of videos this year, and it's towards the end of the year, and it's kind of seeming like a lot of my plans are steadily going out the window. I've been extremely busy, and yeah, I don't know how much I'm going to be able to do, but I do have some pretty interesting stuff planned to close out 2024, and I'm going to be doing a tour video at the beginning of next year. So that's something that I hope that you're all looking forward to. I'm definitely looking forward to doing it. But if you like what I do here and you want to support this channel, you can do so by heading over to the Patreon and becoming a patron for $2 a month. You get behind the scenes videos, you get bloopers and whatnot, stuff like that. Sometimes you even get, if I am able to get a video done before my scheduled release date, I usually give my patrons early access to new videos, like sometimes 2 or 3 days early access to new videos before they go live on YouTube. I usually talk about what I've got coming up. I show sections of my scripts and whatnot, for future videos, and I talk well in advance about new things and show thumbnails before they end up, on YouTube. So if you'd like to support me, you can do so there. You don't have to. There's zero obligation. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. And yeah, as I said before, that's all I got for you. I want to say thank you so much for hanging out with me. It's been a wild year. I didn't think that this year would go like it has. Within this year, I finally became a YouTube partner. Like, at first, I hit like an initial milestone, which is where like you're kind of a partner with YouTube, where you have some of the things that YouTube gives people, like where like you can create memberships and get like super likes and whatnot. But then you still have to hit the 4,000 watch hours and hit 1,000 subs. And I'm well over 1,000 subs at this point. I'm at like 1,400 subs. And I hit the 4,000 watch hours that I needed to become a full partner with YouTube earlier this month in November. So that was pretty wild. I wasn't really sure that it would ever happen. And it did happen. Like, I'm a full YouTube partner now. So that's pretty wild. It is pretty wild. And who would have thought, who would have thought that would actually come to pass? But yeah, I don't know what else is going to happen, but I'm excited for 25. I got a lot of plans. I got like new ideas for much longer videos that I want to do. Like I want to cover whole series in like a video. So that's something that I'm going to try to figure out how I'm going to do. And given that like my time's already so tight, like am I going to be able to sit there and just read a whole series while also trying to drop, videos consistently? Because if I just read a whole series and that's it, dude, I'm gonna drop a video like once every 6 months or something. So I don't know. I have a lot of planning to do, but I do have some more stuff for the rest of this year that I want to drop that is set in stone. Like I'm writing scripts and whatnot for it all, so it is happening. And then in 25, there's a lot of stuff that I want to do, and yeah, I want to keep making videos for this channel. I want to keep this pretty wild dream alive. That it's been 3 years grown, and yeah, thank you so much to everybody that watches these videos. If you watch this far, it means the absolute world to me that you stuck around and that you continue to support this thing. And yeah, please take care of yourselves. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Until next time that we meet.